Welcome to Restaurant Influencers, powered by Entrepreneur Magazine and Yelp. My name is Sean Walchef, founder of Cali Barbecue Media. We want to thank Toast, our primary point of sale partner, for having the courage to believe in this mission to share the stories, the lessons and stories of restaurant owners, restaurant operators, people in the hospitality business that are sharing their message with the global audience because of the internet. Today, we have David Dressler. You can find him at David T. Dressler on Instagram. He is the co-author of the 10-Year Plan, which is an incredible book about the founding of Tender Greens, one of my favorite brands. I'm located here in San Diego, so I've had a front row seat to what these guys have created, what they built, and how they scaled to a $100 million brand, 30 stores, average unit volume 3.8 million per store. Absolutely incredible. And the fact that you and Eric took the time to write a book and share those secrets with the hospitality industry and with the world, we're grateful to have you on the show. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Sean.
So the first question is a random question, but where in the world is your favorite stadium, stage, or venue?
The Hollywood Bowl, without question, is my favorite place to go with my wife and friends to watch a show. And we recently went to Hall & Oates a couple months back, and being out with the living again was just remarkable. And packing a picnic and just being in that beauty is just remarkable to me.
Okay, so we're going to go to the Holiday Bowl, and we're going to pretend like I've convinced Entrepreneur and Toast and Yelp to put on a hospitality conference with the best of the best in the world. We're going to fill the audience, and I'm going to put you on center stage and pretend like people don't know who you are, and give you 2 minutes to share your story and the Tender Green story. It's something we recommend all podcast listeners. Everyone needs to have a pitch. We do the pitch in real life. You've raised capital, you've done the pitch, but you need to do the pitch. You need to tell your story online so that you can connect with a bigger audience. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, so 120 seconds to share your story. You're going to be able to do that.
Now I'm going to give it my best shot.
All right, here we go. Ready? Go.
All right. So I was working for the man in the luxury hotel business, sweating it out. And as I went up the career ladder and progressed, I became more and more doubtful that there was a future for me. But I had been invested enough in it to know that it wasn't an easy exit. And it just so happened that at a hotel in Santa Monica, California, I met my business partners, and we were all three of us within 6 months of age of each other, and all three of us just itching to do something. So we used our collective courage to jump ship, to come up with a plan, and to move forward into building Tender Greens, which was meant to be, and I think achieved, opening a business that was heart-centered, that was food-focused, that was a value to guests, that nurtured both the belly and the soul. And that's what we did. We kept it simple. We kept it straightforward, focused on partnerships with great farmers, a really scaled down, simple service model where kindness was the most important standard, and started building restaurants up and down the California coast, the kind of place that people would go and feel like an attachment to the food, wish they could make it at home, would buy those ingredients at the farmer's market and do their best to make it, but this gave them a chance to get out of their apartments and go and enjoy it. Our original business plan, when we incorporated, we called our company 10-Year Plan, TYP Restaurant Group. And that's the name of the book. But it was always a plan that we'd be committed for the first 10 years to work together, to put our guests first, to put the business first, and to just hit it out of the park. And as a result, we lived up to that commitment. We built out 30 restaurants, 100 million in revenue, went bi-coastal, and built a company with an enduring, beautiful, heart-centered, purpose-driven culture. I've since left active duty to just before the pandemic, and set out a shingle so that I can help other founders and executives realize the same vision of a purpose-driven culture, a business that means more than just profit, and I help leaders get there, and also look at their lives in terms of a 10-year plan and how they can be holistic leaders, both on and off the clock.
I absolutely love the fact that you had the courage, the foresight, and the founders to think of the 10-year plan. The fact that you named your corporation the TYP corporate. What was it? The TYP.
TYP Restaurant Group.
TYP Restaurant Group. I mean, usually a restaurant owner comes up with the idea for a great concept, and the goal, the plan is to get the restaurant open. And then you realize that you actually have a much bigger plan. I always joke that you have to run a marathon just to get a restaurant open. And then once you complete that marathon, you realize the race hasn't even started yet.
No doubt.
So where did the vision, where did the foresight come? Because thinking in 10-year increments, I mean, it's just a very unnatural thing for us to do. I love the fact that you guys did that, and now you're teaching other restaurant owners, other business leaders, how important it is to think long term. We say that we built our business the way we build our barbecue, low and slow, and truly that we believe we're a 14-year startup. Even though we've been in business for 14 years, we believe it's day one. Where did that vision come from?
We had all worked in fine dining restaurants. We'd all worked for others. The three of us wanted that exit strategy at the end of it. We wanted to build something of value. And we knew that wasn't going to happen overnight. And we weren't, any one of us, interested in walking away from our day jobs to build just one restaurant. And so the plan was always to open many. And we figured if we're going to ask our friends and family to invest and write checks, they need to know, one, that they're going to get their money back, and two, by when. And we didn't think that 3 years or 5 years was a comfortable model for us, because we wouldn't have been able to build the kind of exit value, enterprise value that we wanted for them and for us. And so 10 years seemed like, well, when we laid it out on paper and started our business plan, well, if we do this year 1, we do this year 3, we just kept moving that plan along and realized that this wasn't going to be an overnight sensation. But how long could we commit to each other as partners? How long could we commit to our shareholders? How long could we commit to our team members? How long would we commit to the communities that we were engaged in? And 10 seemed like a magical number that would allow us to achieve our goals. And in fact, we did it in 9.
That's incredible. I want to bring you back to a day that many restaurant owners, people that are listening to this podcast, that they can remember, which I'm glad the book made you go back and document. But I want to talk about the jacaranda tree, about bringing you back to, I mean, I have a huge jacaranda tree is my favorite tree on earth. And it reminds me of the beginning of my sobriety. But nonetheless, I want to bring you back to that jacaranda tree and the broom, and kind of your opening thoughts with this vision, this 10-year plan, but then to see the realization lined up right in front of you, right before your eyes.
For me personally, when I was working for others, I worked for Four Seasons Hotels, and I remember opening day of the Four Seasons New York on 57th Street. And I went outside to take a breath, and I found one of the corporate executives sweeping the sidewalk on 57th Street in Manhattan, right in front of the hotel. And I thought, wow, is that ever cool that he's doing that? And then fast forward however many years to my own first restaurant opening up, and this beautiful purple blooming jacaranda tree on our patio in Culver City. Well, first of all, it was a love-hate relationship with that jacaranda.
It usually
everywhere.
is.
And as soon as somebody stepped on them, they turned to mud, and it was just a mess all the time.
It usually is.
But back to the poetry of opening day, I had my broom out there, and I swept down the sidewalk, and people were starting to gather, and I swept all those blooms away, and everything was pristine. And I turned around to look at this incredible manifestation. Our sign was up, our front door looked beautiful. You could see everybody buzzing inside this tiny, beautiful little jewel box of a restaurant, and it felt like it was mine. Like owning your first home, like just this beautiful sense of, wow, we really did it. And then I went back inside, put the broom away, did a couple of things, and came back to look out the door, and there was a line that went from our door all the way down the block, around the corner from the bakery. There was like a bakery depot where you could buy day old bread and brownies from Entenmann's or whatever. And it just kept going. I kept walking and looking and it never ended. And I knew we were in trouble.
It's incredible when you think about coming up, meeting your partners, having a vision, beginning to pitch investors, beginning to pitch family and friends. So many of the times people tell you you're crazy, especially, you kind of have to have a little bit of crazy to be in the hospitality business, to give so much of yourself, to give so much of others. That's why it's heart focused. That's why hospitality is the way that it is. I'd love for you to share the story of meeting Howard Schultz early on in your journey and kind of what that meant to you after hearing so many no's.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. So I was working, I stepped away from my day job as a director of food and beverage at that hotel in Santa Monica where I met with my partners. And I still needed to obviously make some money while we were getting this together. And I went to work as a pool waiter at the Peninsula, thinking that it was going to take 2 months to get the money together.
2 months, nice.
Yeah, I figured, by the end of summer we've got this, and I'll be able to quit that job and start doing stuff for my real job. It took 2.5 years to raise the money.
2 months, 2.5 years, a little bit different.
Yeah,
low and slow.
Yeah,
I love it.
Slow, for sure. Man, I stepped away from your question. What was it?
It was Howard Schultz.
Oh yeah. So I'm working. So I'm working at the pool, and now it's starting to get a little chilly in the mornings because it's the end of summer, and I haven't raised any money. And so the general manager of the hotel says, so David, do you want to be my next food and beverage director? And I'm like, no, I'm sticking with my plan. And he says, okay, well, if you still want to make money, maybe I'll put in your transfer. So I transferred to the dining room. Yes. And I'm working down in the dining room serving breakfast and lunch so that my evenings can be free for shareholder meetings. And one day, the general manager comes into lunch with Howard Schultz, and Eric, Matt, and I had all read Pour Your Heart Into It, and it was like one of those seminal foundational readings for us. And so I went up to the table because I was always assigned to the general manager when he came in, and he says, well, I'd like to meet Howard Schultz, and this is David Dressler, and he tells a little bit about my career, and says he's doing this because he's raising money to start his own business. Throws me the perfect softball, and so I get to say to Howard Schultz, pleasure.
He gave you the 120 seconds.
With your book, and he says, whatever you do, don't give up. And I wasn't about to ask him if he'd consider writing a check, but and I could only hope that in the back of my mind. But the end result was that I left that moment so pumped up that this guy wasn't saying you're nuts, wasn't saying, oh great, good for you, gave me a piece of advice. And it was at a time when Eric and I periodically had these little meetings in dive bars across Los Angeles to sort of try to encourage each other to keep going.
Yes, keep going.
And so Howard, wherever you are, thanks for doing that. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's incredible when you think about the impact that people who have been there and done that can have on businesses, on brands that haven't started, that have started, that are 14 years in. You never know what your words of wisdom, what you're sharing can do to impact the next generation. And I think it's just so powerful that the CEO of Starbucks took the time to tell you that. It wasn't something that he needed to do. He could have told you were crazy, but he told you not to quit. And I'm sure there was plenty of times in his life where he thought about quitting, and maybe somebody came up to him and told him not to quit. It's one of the reasons why we're so excited about this podcast, is that it is through lessons and stories. And it's stories like that of these serendipitous meetings that we have in life when we're willing to lean in and chase our dreams and chase our passions. For you, can you think back to the setback It's easy to talk about the successes. What I love about in your book is you talk about setback, you talk about 2007, 2008, Liberty Station, which is the second store opening, big dreams going from a LA location to a San Diego location. And that's something that, you guys had a lot of chutzpah to do that. Take us to that experience and what you learned from it.
So, having a restaurant that was literally like a food tornado daily. We were serving 1,200 people a day in 1,700 feet, by the way.
So that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. The amount of volume that is just, it's almost incomprehensible.
We paid the rent in one lunch every month.
It's unbelievable.
and it's like just amazing. And
it's everyone's dream. That's what your dream is. When you open up a restaurant, is to literally fulfill that dream.
That's right. That's right. It was nuts and so exciting and so gratifying. And we knew we were going to open more of them. And we've had the great fortune of having a career working with amazing chefs who we counted on as being the next generation beyond us. And Pete Balistreri down in San Diego was the next guy that we were going to call. He invested in Tender Greens early on, actually wrote a check. His best friend, Ryan Brandenburg, growing up in Point Loma. And so we knew that there was talent ready to go, that we could count on day one to get it done. And they started shadowing us in San Diego, taking in Los Angeles, taking more and more commitment. And Pete had young children and was coming up to spend weeks with us at a time, would go home for his 2 days off, but really was both of them just so committed. And so we started looking at real estate down there thinking, well, yeah, that's a logical next step, which in hindsight, 2.5 hours away from our first location, not awesome.
No,
but we had Pete and Ryan. So we looked at a bunch of spots and we were very much hat in hand in those days. We didn't have a lot going for us beyond the success of the initial restaurant, but we didn't have any proven 3 years of financials or everything else that the landlords were looking for. And we needed a particular kind of space. So going down there, we went to this beautiful, architecturally significant heritage site, the Naval Training Academy in Point Loma. And we're so excited by how beautiful it was that we probably stepped away from a little bit of our site criteria requirements and ended up on the backside of a building that had no retail component to it other than a couple of grocery stores and a Starbucks, and very, very stringent signage requirements because it was a historical site. So we went from being, the best kept secret in Los Angeles to truly a hidden treasure in San Diego. And so when we opened, we initially had some good lunch traffic, but it was just a snooze at dinner. And it took a long time for the restaurant to find its footing. And we were concerned that we'd made a really big strategic error because we were using our profits from Los Angeles to support the restaurant in San Diego. But Pete was undaunted and determined, and the two of them worked incredibly hard. We were driving down there to give them days off every week and staying at the Vagabond Inn, I think is what it was called.
Nice.
Place right off the sports arena. And just keeping it going. And it was there that we learned a certain level of industriousness that we didn't need to have in LA around doing way more with way less. And it forced us to innovate, largely due to Pete. And eventually it caught on as the place where chefs would go on their day off to eat. And he was starting to make salumi down there, and we were getting fresh fish off the boats. His family was a fishing family and knew a lot of people down there. And so all of a sudden it became the place where you could get food that you couldn't get anywhere else in San Diego at a price point that was almost ridiculous. So it caught on, and suddenly there were lines out the door at both meal periods, and the catering caught on, and we were off to the races. But those first, I think from 2008 when we first opened to 2010, it was frightening.
Yeah, just keep going. One of the things you do discuss is the weakness that you guys felt you had in marketing and branding. I would argue that your marketing and branding was done for you by your ambassadors, all the people with influence that came into the restaurant that went out and spread the love of Tender Greens. But the world that we live in 2022 is a much different place for marketing and branding. What were the lessons that you learned in this 10-year period with Tender Greens as far as it comes to sharing your story?
Sure. Well, certain things that don't change, and that were, sort of in our naive post pre social media phase of business, were to have an authentic story to tell. So we did nothing but PR. We focused having all of our efforts on getting stories told about us in magazines, newspapers, on radio broadcasts, wherever we could to get the story out there. And the stories that we were telling were about the ingredients and about the people. And when we opened in San Diego, we put Ryan and Pete out front. We had no desire for it to be known as an LA brand that, was honoring San Diego with its coolness. Yep. It was about these two guys from Point Loma that opened their own restaurant. And then it was about the farms. It was about Paul Reeve, and it was about Point Loma Farms. It was about these cool artisanal suppliers that we had. And that's the story that I think people want to know about because it makes them connect to the restaurant, Tender Greens or any. Beyond that, the lessons learned were, so there was that and community involvement. That was our marketing plan. So when I say we were naive about marketing, we didn't know anything about anything else.
Yeah.
We certainly weren't going to spend any money on advertising. We couldn't afford to. But now, having come full circle, I think realizing that there's a lot that you can do that's really cool on social media, but it doesn't necessarily connect people to the brand. And what people want is to that third place that Howard Schultz talks about, that place that they connect to, that's not work and it's not home. It's that other place that they go that they still feel equally as connected to as those, a neighborhood gathering spot. And that place has to stand for something. So marketing on social, I think, has to connect consumers to the brand. And we stepped away from that. We got real cool. And I think now I'm seeing the guys at our brand come full circle back to talking about the chefs and their dreams and aspirations and their successes, and talking about the farms and talking about produce at the peak of season and connecting to people in those kind of lifestyle ways.
I love that. If you could give advice on somebody that's listening right now that wants to launch their concept, that's getting ready to go ask for money, what would that advice be?
Refine your plan. Really think about, put your head in the place of the one who's about to write the check. What are their concerns? Because what their concerns are lessons for you to learn to think about. Because as restaurateurs, as chefs, we think about putting the food on the plate. We think about the hospitality. We don't often think about the business side of things. We don't often think about the people side of things, the intricacies of having a business that's largely based on humans interacting. But we have to think through those things. We have to think about the finances. We have to think about marketing. We have to think about HR. We have to think about real estate development. And the reason that I say that is because we don't know what we don't know. But if we think through those things and we get wise counsel on those things, we end up getting ahead of the game, because it's hard enough to open a restaurant.
Yes.
It's a rough business. And if we haven't thought through a few more things than we're accustomed to thinking through, we will encounter them, and they will cost us time. They will cost us money. They will cost us hours. They will result in lawsuits. They will cause us to take steps back when we're just now getting our stride. So to the extent that we think through, sure, we think through our amazing offering and the food quality and our service and everything that we know to be true, that we're really good at, that makes us love this business, but think through the things that we don't necessarily love also. And if your partner is somebody you love, but they're only good at the same things that you're good at, that's a red flag for me. we have to surround ourselves with people who are good at things that we're not good at, to watch our backs, to watch the businesses back in ways that we can't or don't know how to. We really stand the greatest chance of success for the good of the people who wrote us checks, for the good of the communities we go into, for our own sake of fulfillment and taking our lives to the next level and that of our families. We owe it to ourselves to mitigate any possible risk that we can, because there's enough stuff that's going to show up anyway.
Can you bring us back to the moment when you received a check from Danny Meyer?
Sure. Can I go a little bit before that?
Sure, please.
Okay. So we had a meeting with, we decided that we wanted to get some money that was beyond our pay grade to raise. And we hired an investment banker, and we had a long-time mentor, Frank Viscara, who I have a ton of respect for. And we were sitting in a hotel room, and we just had a meeting with a company that was interested. And the reasons they were interested, and it's a great company, but the reasons they were interested in Tender Greens was because they had stopped growing and they needed to add a certain number of sales dollars onto their bottom line. So it was a really underwhelming meeting with some people that we were excited to meet, and at the end of it, we were sort of debriefing, and I don't remember if it was Frank or if it was the banker, but somebody said, "Well, I mean, if you could have anybody, who would it be?" And I think we all sort of stepped on each other and said, "Well, Danny Meyer would be great." And then I think Frank said, "Well, I'm gonna see if I can make that happen." And we thought, "Yeah, sure, okay, great." The thing about
I like this Frank guy already.
Yeah, well, and it turns out that he made the meeting happen, and he and a couple of people that he works with came to San Diego, and we ate a ton of food and we drank a ton of wine, and we just got to know each other, and they got to experience Tender Greens, and then we did it again, and it was just this incredible experience in these two cities. And then we went to New York, and they returned the favor, and we just had a remarkable tour of some of Danny's restaurants and some others, and really just had frank heart-to-heart conversations about the restaurant business and about our dreams. And then, you know, the business people went to work on it, and we did a lot of dog and pony shows. And but to know that I was sitting in a Sprinter van with Danny Meyer going and touring our restaurants was just remarkable. To know that 20 years earlier, I took night classes from him at the Learning Annex in Lower Manhattan.
No way.
Yeah.
That is amazing. He's always giving back. Look at that. Always giving back. Beautiful.
When I told him about that, he said, "I can't imagine what I would have taught you." And I couldn't believe the humility. So he became a partner and investor, and having him on our board of directors was just a gift. It was a great time to have connection with him and to hear his stories and his wisdom. And his company, Union Square Hospitality, was always very gracious and warm and helpful.
If you could leave our listeners with one thing as they scale their businesses or dream of scaling their businesses, growing beyond one restaurant to multiple restaurants, or opening up that first restaurant, what would you leave them with?
I think I would return the favor that Howard Schultz gave me and just say, go for it. You know, think it through, be courageous, go for it. Realize that, and for those of us who are going into business now in the wake of the pandemic, that this is still the last bastion of human contact. Our business, our industry is the place where people gather to be away from their apartments, away from their homes, away from the kids when they need a break, in a place where they eat other food other than their own, where they get served, where they get to relax, where they get to look at beautiful people around them, where they get to hear the clink clank and the music of just hustle bustle, the beauty of it. That's never going to go away. And so if you have a great product and a great service model and you can make it a viable business, go for it. And while you're doing that, ask for help along the way from helpful uncles who will, or aunties who have been there and who can tell you, because we're all very, very happy to help in this community, especially. Listen to podcasts like this, read books like 10-Year Plan, ask a lot of questions. Don't be shy. Don't be proud. We're here. We're waiting for you.
Love it. Where, how can people connect with you?
So if you're interested in working with me or just want to get in touch, go to quietadvisory.com, quietadvisory.com. And there's plenty of information about me, about the book, about my programs, how I coach, and also a way to get in touch or get on my calendar.
I love it. So the book is the 10-Year Plan, and it's been truly an honor. If you want to reach out to me, you can always reach out at Shawn P. Walchef, SHAWN PWALCHEF. We are grateful that you listen to this podcast. We're grateful that you interact. Life is all about lessons and stories. And David, your story, the Tender Green story, the founder's story, like I said, I applaud you for the courage to share the details, some of them difficult to write, I'm sure difficult to publish, but they make an impact. And everything we do in the hospitality business, this is so much bigger than our restaurants. You know, there's villages all over the world that if they have internet access and they can hear these lessons and stories, they can go chase their dreams. So thank you for sharing that with us. And as we always say, stay curious, get involved. And as David reaffirmed, don't be afraid to ask for help. We will catch you guys next week. Thank you. On Restaurant Influencers, you will learn how to share your brand story online from the best smartphone storytellers in the restaurant and hospitality space. Powered by Entrepreneur Media and Yelp, our weekly show will explore the creator economy ecosystem so that you can find opportunities for your food business to grow. Thanks to Toast, our primary technology partner at Cali Barbecue Media, for not only sponsoring this show, but for helping restaurants become digital-first businesses. If you want to learn more about why we switched from Aloha to Toast after 12 years in business and how Toast can help your restaurant become a digital-first restaurant, please send us a DM today at Shawn P. Walchef, SHAWN PWALCHEF. Thank you.